To geographers and environmental scientists, the environment refers to one's surroundings, including all the living and non-living factors with which people, animals, and other organisms coexist. In this lecture, we will examine the environmental challenges of the world to include non-renewable energy resources, such as oil and natural gas. These topics are important to geographers to pinpoint and understand how human interactions affect the environment and where we need to focus our efforts to create a sustainable world. Non-renewable resources include fossil fuels and uranium. Fossil fuels include coal, oil, and natural gas that comes from the remains of buried plants and animals that lived millions of years ago. Over time, sand and other sediments covered these deposits while heat and pressure gradually transformed them into fossil fuels we use today. Oil is also known as crude oil and petroleum and is often found near natural gas. Oil has been very useful to humans in that it can be burned as fuel to heat buildings and to generate electricity or refined into gasoline for transportation needs. Furthermore, most plastic products, cosmetics, and some pharmaceuticals are made from oil. Oil is often related to proved or proven reserves, which expresses the estimated quantity of a reserve that could be extracted in the future given present financial, technological, and geological conditions. Furthermore, proved resources are not fixed. They change as a result of consumption, discoveries of additional resources, or advances in the process of recovering resources. Proved reserves are also an estimate, since there is no way for us to know for sure exactly how much oil the earth contains. Proved oil reserves are dynamic and unevenly distributed. The table shows the countries with the largest proved oil reserves. Venezuela has surpassed Saudi Arabia to have the largest proved oil reserves. Canada's reserves include oil sands. Instead of being drilled, oil sands are mined in open pits. The product first recovered is bitumen, a much lower grade of crude oil that must be upgraded before it can be refined. The pie chart on the bottom left shows global energy consumption by fuel. Almost 90% of the energy consumed comes from fossil fuels. The pie chart on the bottom right shows the percentage of global proved reserves by region. The Middle East has by far the largest share of proved oil reserves, but that percentage has declined from 69% to 48% as proved oil reserves have increased in the Americas. One way to estimate how long the oil reserves will last is to use the reserve to production ratio. The calculation of this ratio is by dividing the total remaining global reserves by the annual rate of oil production and is expressed in number of years. Currently, the RP ratio for the world is 41.6, meaning at the present rate of production and barring any new discoveries, the world's oil will last a little more than 4 decades. Another concern is the concept of peak oil production, in which oil production tends to rise rapidly at first, reaches a peak, and then declines rapidly due to economic depletion. Therefore, resource extraction tends to follow a bell-shaped curve. This has led some to believe that an energy transition is inevitable and that alternative energy sources would be used. OPEC was formed in the 1960s to seek a coordinated effort of oil production in countries with large oil reserves and functions as a cartel, which is an organization that controls the supply of a commodity and therefore its demand and price. OPEC members are shown on the map. Most of the founding members are in the Middle East, but Venezuela advanced the idea of a petroleum organization and played a leading role in the establishment of OPEC. OPEC was the major player in the Arab oil embargo and oil crisis in the 1970s, when it restricted the movement of oil tankers to ports in Europe and to the United States, triggering the first major spike in oil prices. These graphs show the events affecting oil prices and oil production by OPEC and non-OPEC countries. The top right graph shows changes in the price of a barrel of oil. High oil prices usually mean high prices at the gas pump. Notice that many events labeled on the graph directly involve OPEC countries. Thus, OPEC's oil production policies influence and are influenced by regional and global affairs. The bottom left graph shows oil production over time. OPEC produces about 43% of the world's oil. However, analysts predict OPEC's share of global production to approach 50% by 2030. And the bottom right graph shows national variations among major oil producers, exporters, and consumers. These average daily volumes show that 5 leading consumer nations account for 45% of global oil consumption. The United States consumes about twice as much oil as it produces and exports very little. Oil and gas can be classified as either conventional or unconventional depending on how it is extracted from the earth. Conventional oil and natural gas are pumped directly from the ground. Unconventional oil and natural gas, on the other hand, require other extraction techniques and is more costly, such as extracting oil and natural gas from shale. It is only until recently that events have converged to make extraction from shale economically feasible and has become very popular. The United States is beginning to experience a boom in the production of shale, whereas forecasts show that the United States will surpass Saudi Arabia to become a leading oil producer. Shale formations are referred to as plays. The map shows the location of active shale plays in the contiguous United States. Shale oil extracted from the Bakken Shale play has made North Dakota the second leading oil producing state after Texas. Shale oil and natural gas production is not without controversy. A single well may require several million gallons of water during the fracking process. Much of the water that is used for fracking is recovered, but it is a form of wastewater and contains chemicals that are dangerous to people and the environment. The concern is that this wastewater could seep into the groundwater and contaminate household water supplies. The photo at the top shows an oil rig standing above the Eagle Ford shale play in South Texas. Here and across the country, this oil boom is taking place on private property, and hundreds of rigs like this have been constructed. The bottom left photo shows the frac pumps that are needed to pressurized pumping. The diagram on the right shows the fracking system. When sand, water, and chemicals are injected into the well, the shale is fractured by the pressure inside the well and the oil is pumped out. Please pause the video and answer the following. Using an example you find on the internet, describe the pros and cons of fracking. Include in your answer the name of the place in your example. In your own words, using the text as a guide, be thorough and specific in your answer. Earn 5 extra credit points on this chapter's video lecture questions assignment only. Name the geological area that has been in the news recently regarding fracking in King George and Caroline counties, and add a map of the area.